7:30.
Namaste everybody. Namaste to
नमस्ते
everybody.
नमस्ते राज जी। मैं सेन पाठक बोल रहा हूँ। आई होप यू रिमेम्बर्स मी।
Yes sir, yes
बिकॉज
sir, I do.
ह्यूस्टन में मैं बहुत बार सुना हूँ आपको।
Yes, yes, I remember meeting you.
जी
I'm sorry,
थैंक
my
यू।
Hindi is not good, so I can speak back in English only.
नो
I'm sorry.
प्रॉब्लम, नो प्रॉब्लम। आई कैन स्पीक टू यू। नो, दिस इज अ बैड हैबिट आई हैव। व्हेनेवर आई सी इंडियन, हिंदी comes out of my mind.
That is not a that's not a bad habit, sir. It's a good habit, but I'm sorry, I cannot understand.
No problem.
वेदम साहब, मैं सत्यनारायण बोल रहा हूँ। दिस इज सत्यनारायण फ्रॉम फ्लोरिडा।
Namaste ji, very happy to see you.
नमस्कार। Very nice to meet you, and probably I'm going to hear you first time, so I didn't get opportunity to hear you before, but I have heard a lot about you.
I'm so happy to hear that, but I hope it meets your interest.
Of course, it's always Vedic discussion is always beyond appreciation, so there is no problem for that. No comments.
डॉक्टर वेदम जी, मैं आपको बताना आई वांट टू टेल यू दैट ही इज नॉट ए सन्यासी, ही इज अ ग्रेट साइंटिस्ट आल्सो।
Wonderful, wonderful,
ही इज
wonderful.
अ ग्रेट साइंटिस्ट, ही इज अ कैंसर बायोलॉजिस्ट।
Okay, okay.
जी, ही इज अ कैंसर बायोलॉजिस्ट। आई कॉल हिम स्वामी जी।
Okay.
He is translating all our holy books, Bhagavad Gita, Gita, everything in poetry in Hindi, just like Tulsidas ji.
Okay, very good, sir.
Yeah, that is
Very
what
good.
he is doing. He has already published quite a few books, and some books he is working on right now.
Very good, very good.
जी,
हमारा ह्यूस्टन से सबको नमस्कार।
नमस्ते 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 मुनिवर जी,
प्रणाम
नमस्ते।
करता
वी
हूं
आर
सर।
वेटिंग फॉर यू।
सर प्रणाम करता हूँ। बस 2-3-6-5 पे स्टार्ट कर देंगे सर।
हाँ जी, हाँ जी।
Such a wonderful background you have, Munivar ji.
अभी सूरज उदय हो रहा है, सुबह सुबह का
जी
समय है।
जी जी।
इट्स वेरी ब्यूटीफुल।
हम्म।
और आजकल सब ये गूगल में आप क्रिएट कर सकते हो।
Only you can do that, not person like me. I am so ignorant.
नो, हमारा भी वही हाल है सर।
अरे नहीं भाई, ऐसी बात नहीं।
डॉक्टर वेरी
करता
मच
हूँ।
फॉर
नमस्ते।
प्रणाम सर।
नमस्ते
आपके
नमस्ते।
यहाँ और है, हमारे यहाँ शाम हो रही है।
जी
बड़ा
जी,
अच्छा।
हमारे यहाँ मॉर्निंग है।
बिल्कुल सर।
Dr. Vedam, are you in Houston these days or you're traveling?
No, I'm in Houston. Well, today I'm in Austin.
Oh, you're in
Austin.
Austin.
Yes. I'm not in my regular background as such, but yes, I live in Houston.
I know you are a very busy man. I know. So thank you very much for taking your time to speak to us.
Pleasure. It's my pleasure, sir. Thank you for inviting me to such a prestigious forum. Thank you. Thank you.
You know, the beauty of this is that a lot of students from university and high school, they connect and they learn. Actually, I thought it would be a great opportunity for them to hear the facts.
Wonderful. So are there students joining in today or have they already joined in?
Yeah, Rajesh, you can kind of add to that. They're
हाँ,
already.
वो लोग ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं हमें यूट्यूब लाइव पर भी सर, अभी यहाँ जूम पे भी, और ज्वाइन करते चले जाएंगे। यहाँ शाम के 6 बजे हैं। बस इसीलिए
Yeah,
मैं वेट कर रहा हूँ बस।
So many hundreds of students and faculty, they join through YouTube or
Okay.
through Zoom?
जूम।
Zoom पर आपके जो इट्स लिमिटेड टू 100 पार्टिसिपेंट्स। हाँ जी राजेश जी।
यस सर, ओनली 100।
राइट
यस 100 सर।
राइट।
सर आपकी अनुमति हो तो हम प्रारंभ करते हैं फॉर्मेलिटीज, उसके बाद लोग जुड़ते जाएंगे हमारे बीच में जब तक सर का लेक्चर प्रारंभ होगा।
हाँ जी बिल्कुल सर। आई थिंक 7:30 बज गए हैं, 5 मिनट ऊपर ही हो रहे हैं बल्कि।
जी जी, ऊपर हो रहे हैं, इसलिए मैं अतिरिक्त समय लिए बिना अन्य लोग जो जुड़ेंगे, मैं श्री किशोर शास्त्री और गुरुपत जी से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वो लोग एंट्री देते रहें, मैं उनको को होस्ट बना देता हूं। और
बिल्कुल।
आदरणीय वेदम सर को मैं को होस्ट बना देता हूं, पीपीटी प्रेजेंट करना होगा। थोड़ा सा डिस्टरबेंस होगा सर, एंट्री हम दे रहे हैं, उस पर ध्यान नहीं देना है सर। आई विल मैनेज। आप सब गुरुजनों का मैं करबद्ध होकर विद फोल्डेड हैंड नमस्कार करता हूँ, नमस्ते करता हूँ, प्रणाम करता हूँ विथ रिगार्ड सर। और यह हमारे लिए परम सौभाग्य का दिन है, समय है कि एक वर्ल्ड के प्रसिद्ध एमिनेंट स्कॉलर डॉक्टर राज वेदम जैसे सर को हम लोग सुनने जा रहे हैं। मैं देख पा रहा हूँ आंध्र प्रदेश से वारालक्ष्मी में, उत्तर प्रदेश से, महाराष्ट्र से, गुजरात से, विभिन्न राज्यों से हमारे फैकल्टीज, एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर्स जुड़े हुए हैं, स्टूडेंट्स हैं, यूट्यूब लाइव हैं, अभी ये बहुत सारी टीचर्स हमारे बीच में जुड़ेंगे। उन सब का मैं हार्दिक स्वागत अभिनंदन करता हूं। हमारे बीच में यूएसए से ही महेंद्र मिश्रा सर जुड़े हैं, आप पैटर्न हैं, आपको भी मैं सादर प्रणाम करता हूं सर। आप गुरुजनों को भी प्रणाम करता हूं। और भारतीय संस्कृति के अनुसार जैसा हमारे ऋषि मुनियों ने किसी शुभ कार्य को करने से पहले मंगलाचरण करते हैं, मैं वैदिक मंगलाचरण के लिए बंगाल प्रांत से संस्कार वाहिनी के युवा कार्यकर्ता सोमनाथ चक्रवर्ती जी को आमंत्रित करता हूं। सोमनाथ चक्रवर्ती जी, अनम्यूट करें सोमनाथ जी।
ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम। ओम शं नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शं नो भवत्तर्यमा शं न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शं न विष्णुरुक्रमः। नमः ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायु तमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि। हरितं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि। तन्मामवतु तद्भक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु भक्तारम्। ओम शांति शांति शांति। हरि ओम। ओम वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मन मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्मयेधि वेदस्य मे यानिस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासिः। अनेनाधीतेनाहुरत्रं सन्दधामि हरितं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि। तन्मामवतु तद्भक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु भक्तारमवतु भक्तारम्। ओम शांति शांति शांति। हरि ओम। ओम सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। हरि ओम। नमो नमः।
जी, धन्यवाद सोमनाथ चक्रवर्ती जी। आज हमारे बीच में, जैसे मैं पूर्ववत ही कहा था, एमिनेंट स्कॉलर डॉक्टर राज वेदम सर हमें प्राप्त हुए हैं। मंच परिवार के लिए गर्व का विषय है, और ऐसे बड़े व्यक्तित्व और विद्वत वरेण्य को परिचय हेतु हम लोग हमारे अंतर्राष्ट्रीय उपाध्यक्ष डॉक्टर कपिल मेहता सर को करबद्ध होकर प्रणाम करके आमंत्रित करता हूं कि हम सबको डॉक्टर राज वेदम सर से परिचित कराएं। मेहता सर, अनम्यूट कर लीजिएगा सर।
धन्यवाद राजेश जी, नमो नमः। आज का दिन बहुत ही शुभ है, क्योंकि आप सभी आर्यजनों से इस अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संस्कृत मंच के माध्यम से आप सबसे जुड़ने का सौभाग्य प्राप्त हो रहा है। मुझे आज इस बात की भी उतनी ही खुशी है कि हमारे आज के जो गेस्ट स्पीकर हैं डॉक्टर राज वेदम, he is an individual whose work has been bridging the worlds of science and true Indian history. Recently, I had a good fortune to listen to his 4-lecture series that was organized at the Arya Samaj of Greater Houston. And during these lectures, he offered profound understanding of the true history of India based on multiple scientific evidence. His in-depth contributions have started to impact the way we understand the history of India. He has given over 300 talks related to his findings, and many are available on YouTube, which you can go and visit under his name. And many of these YouTubes, he has been viewed by about 5 million people, so which suggests the widespread appeal of his work. Dr. Vedam's academic background spans from an electrical engineering degree from Mysore University, graduate degree from the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, and the doctoral degree from Oregon State University in US. He is a visiting faculty of Hindu University of America, Rishihut University, and Arsha Seva Kendra. He has conducted many teaching training workshops, including, as I understand, the one in Nalanda University about a couple of years back. He has delivered, again, as I said, about 300 talks, and his background work that delves into the evolution of scientific thought using genetics, astronomy, archaeology to reveal a complex relationship between science and the history. He has earned a lot of acclaim, not only for his scholarly rigor, but also for his ability to make complex ideas accessible to a layman, shedding light on how the scientific evidence can help correct the historical narratives. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Vedam, and we truly appreciate his taking out the time from a very busy schedule and to be with us today this morning. I understand he's still, he's just visiting Austin for some work, and still he has been able to give us a time. Thank you very much, Dr. Vedam. So without taking much time, I would request you to come and please share the wisdom about your findings with the audience here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kapilji. And thank you for the organizers, Rajesh, Dr. Rajesh and others, so for inviting me. So let me first share my screen. Tell me if you can see my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Then I will get started. So once again, my namaskar to everybody in the audience. Thank you for coming on the Saturday evening when so many nice shows are happening on streaming services and TV. You have taken time to come to this lecture. That shows your commitment to the subject. So thank you very much for that. And today we are going to talk on antiquity of the Bhartiya civilization. And before I start, Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. My pranams to my gurus, and from whom I have learned, and I continue to be inspired by many teachers, the bottom over here. And we learn a lot from their works, and we owe our pranams, respects to them. So to start the whole subject, why do we have an unsatisfactory historiography of India? Historiography means the process of writing history. We see that narratives are very negative on India, whether you see in India or USA or anywhere, whether you see in textbooks, on television, on news media, on academia, everywhere, it's very negative. So we need to know who are the people who manufacture negative narratives, and what should we understand why we are hit on identity. That is the context for my entire talk. And I often put up this table over here where I say we have some issues with the narrative of Indian history. We have something that I call evidence-based history, and there is something that is questionable, that is still there in our official. Bharat is a very ancient civilization, but we are not positioned so. The textbooks and others say we are a recent civilization. After some people called Aryans, they invaded India in 1500 BC. That is when this Vedic civilization has started in India. So they say you're a recent civilization, you're not an old civilization. The evidence shows that all Indians are similar at the genetic level. We are pretty similar. But then the narrative says that we are Aryans, we are Dravidians, we are tribal people, and all these kind of divisions have come about. We can show that knowledge systems developed independently in India, but then they tell us that knowledge systems developed in India after input from Babylon, Greece, and other such places. And we can show that we have very humane, enlightened philosophies in the Vedanta and other areas, but they position us as aggressive, uncivilized, inhumane philosophies. We can show that IKS impacted other civilizations, but they tell us that other civilizations impacted IKS. So what do we see? We see 180-degree difference between the reality and what they are telling us. And that is what today's talk is all about. I will not address IKS, but I'll just talk about evidence for us. So I say that there are about 5 frameworks at least who have impacted the history of India. These are the colonial people, Eurocentric, missionaries, socialists, and the Marxists. When the colonial people came to India, they wanted to write a history of India for their civil servants coming from Great Britain of those days. And so they presented India as a backward, primitive, illiterate, superstitious society, whereas white Europeans were forward, progressive, technologically advanced, and this kind of a society. So they had an interest in presenting India that way. When the Eurocentric people encountered Indian literature in the Sanskritam works, they were shocked with the amount of information over there. So they wanted to ask certain questions. For example, when they noticed that Sanskrit, Latin, and Greek are, they wanted to know, why is this relation between these languages? So to them, they said that the relation is because these people called Aryans have come into India. The Aryans are common to Europe and to India. That's why of these languages. So they presented a whole lot of ideas of scholars in that era, including the caste and other such nonsense, came about through Eurocentric scholarships. Missionaries are always there where colonial people were there. They wanted to convert Indians into Christianity, so they were the translating Sanskrit literature. If you see who translated the Vedas, Griffith, who translated the Puranas, H.H. Wilson, all of these people were interested in presenting India as a primitive, superstitious society. So the way they translated these things also shows what they've done. Since 1947, when India got independence, unfortunately, we got Nehruvian socialism. Nehru believed that he was a socialist, and so to him, Hinduism is a primitive system. It has to be destroyed if India has got to progress in the future. So they brought about a lot of constitutional laws and other such things designed to kill the Hindu faith. So that is what we are seeing since 1947. And the Marxists, after Indira Gandhi made a political deal with the communists in 1972 for political survival, the communists agreed to support her, but they wanted the HRD sector. And so Narul Hasan was the minister who was appointed, and he created the entire ecosystem of Marxists in India. All the social science institutions you see today, they all have started from him. And so they have controlled the education sector completely. Maybe even today the situation is true. So these 5 frameworks, they have hijacked the history of India. They have imposed their own ideologies and dogma, and it's resulted in our identity getting subverted. Our identity has been completely taken over by these people. So as an example for colonial missionary Eurocentrism, people like James Mill, this man had never visited India, but he still felt that he could write history with these kind of words, that beneath the exterior of the Hindu lies a disposition to deceit and perfidy. Hindus, like the eunuch, excels in the quality of a slave, disposed to excessive exaggeration, physical sense disgustingly unclean in their person and houses. So these are the kind of things that he wrote. And people who were coming from Britain those days when civil servants come, there's no aeroplane and other such things. They come on ship. Ship takes 3 months to come from Britain to India. So in those 3 months, they'll have books to read, history of India, other such things. And they used to read nonsense like this and come to India. So very, very unfortunate the way they wrote. And Macaulay, who believed that a single shelf of a good European library, people like Dickens and people like those kind of things, Shakespeare, is worth the entire literature of India and Arabia. So these are the kind of thinkings that they had. So clearly, there's a problem in the way they saw us. Socialists and Marxists, they destroy the identity also, and the roots go to Karl Marx, right? So Karl Marx, he believed that all of history is a history of class conflicts. And he believed that one day the working class will rise and destroy the ruling class, and there'll be a bloody revolution, and they will win control, forever erasing all classes. So they always had this fantasy of a classless utopian society. Karl Marx lived at a time when Europe was industrializing, and he saw how the workers are exploited by the factory owners. So his theories were applicable to that time and era. But unfortunately, these things are same in socialism also. There is no difference between socialism and communism. In communism, they see a violent revolution, whereas in socialism, they believe that change and reform can happen through democratic processes. But otherwise, they are exactly the same. So that is why in India, we see that all the constitutional laws, amendments got with the UPA government are all designed to destroy the Hindu faith, destroy the practice, heritage, everything, because of this ideology to which they belong. So we have to question, why is your ideology the one, drishti? Why is your drishti the one with which you want to see my civilization? That is a question that people need to ask these people. So like I said, socialist Nehru was a member of the Fabian Society in Britain, which wanted to bring socialism to Great Britain in the 1940s. So when he came to India, he brought about these same ideas. That is why overnight, 1947, Indians started adopting drishti of socialism in all their writing, looking at caste inequality, looking at oppressor, oppressed kind of narratives. All these things have arisen because of the kind of thinking that he brought with him. And like I said, Indira Gandhi, 1969-71, for political survival, she made a pact with the communists, and they wanted the education sector. Narul Hasan, he created and appointed the entire ecosystem of the socialist Marxist education. All these agencies you see here were set up by them. And in 50 years, they've completely eradicated the non-socialist, non-Marxist scholarship in India. The Vedic practitioner, the Sanskritam scholar, all these people were pushed out of the system. They had no place in academia, whether as vice chancellor, professor, and so on, unless it was a specialized Sanskrit college somewhere. They had no say in any of these things. So completely marginalized. That is what we see in the policies that have been followed, perhaps until the present times. So the corruptions have happened over 300 years. This is not an overnight situation. We're seeing colonial scholars, missionaries, Eurocentrics, people like Portuguese, Dutch, French, and British. I call it colonial hegemony or the imperialist model. Hand in hand, Christian imperialism, the missionary model, people like Caldwell, Pope, from 1500s to present, who presented these kind of ideas. that Hinduism is a caste-ridden religion, Dravidians are oppressed people, Brahmins are evil people. All these ideas have come from the Christian writings. And Eurocentric scholars bringing in things like linguistics, anthropology, caste, and other such things, they have brought about another set of ideas. But all of their ideologies are convergent. They all have a common idea that the Hindu faith has got to be removed. So towards that, finally, this theory, Aryan invasion and migration theory, has evolved, the central idea. And if you might think that today these things are old, they are no longer relevant, unfortunately, it is the received wisdom for our academia. Today, our socialist Marxist models are adopted by academia, for whom all this is the unquestioned knowledge and truth. So they take that and they work with Aryan invasion, migration, and so on. And they use archaeology to try to find some archaeology to fit their models. Similarly, with genetics, they make the results to align with their own assumptions, and we have problems. There are circular dependencies and questionable assumptions. All of that impacts the Bharatiya identity. So in a very high level, we can say that the colonials were interested to uphold the Bible chronology because they believed Bible was written in 4004 BCE, and rather they believed God created the world in 4004 BCE. God destroyed the world in 2500 BC, Noah's flood, and all of humanity is based on the sons of Noah. So they could not understand why the Puranas have got a chronology that is going to very great antiquity. They could not accept that. So all their efforts were made towards subverting the chronology of India. So they wanted to uphold the chronology initially. They also wanted to show Hindus as primitive, backward, stagnant, superstitious, discriminatory. The Eurocentric people wanted to show this and the superiority of white Europeans. Missionaries wanted to show these things and to promote Christianity and to show that there are so many class problems in India and such things. Socialist academia wants to show Hindus as primitive. Plus, they have something called subaltern studies, history from below. The voices of the people from below are amplified. And they brought about this notion of oppressor, oppressed, conflict dynamics. Every history of India is only conflict. This person marginalized that person, this person was this, that person's ancestors were victims and such things. That is the only thing they see in our history. And they soften Islam's impact. And the Marxists want to show all these things and show class conflicts. And today we've got wokeism, Islamism. They also want to claim victimhood, along with the new deracinated framework in the South, in some areas, not all of Tamil Nadu, some areas. Dravidianism, where they belong, they again want to show Hindus as primitive, they're separate of Hindus, promote Christianity, because a lot of the Dravidianist movement has been hijacked by Christians today, converted Christians, and we show class conflict. So these are the kind of issues and motivations for these agencies to control our identity. Why do we care about all these things? We care about it because this narrative has got a very big impact. This is at the root of all our problems. When they say Aryan invasion happened in 1500 BCE, they say these nomads from Central Asia, they were illiterate because they didn't have a script. They had an oral tradition. That oral tradition, they had invaded India. They destroyed the Harappa civilization. So India was then run by these nomads in India and Ganga Plain for more than 1,000 years. And after 1,000 years, suddenly civilization came back in Magadha. After Magadha made contact with Alexandrian Greeks, 300 BCE, suddenly we got Brahmi script. Suddenly we got Ashokan writing and everything. We became civilized. So we became civilized in 300 BC. Then they turn around and say, you are a young civilization. You have not had enough time to generate knowledge in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and so on. So if you got something like Shushruta Samhita, if you got something like Surya Siddhanta, then you must have copied it from the earlier civilizations, the Babylonians, Greeks, they must have taught you because you're a young civilization. So you see, it corrupts everything. So this is what they tell us, that Aryans brought Sanskrit to India from Central Asia. Brahmi came from the Semitic script called Aramaic from Levant into India. Astronomy came from Babylon into India. Math and sciences from the Greeks. Turkic Muslims, they got us culture, cuisine, architecture, music, civilization. British got us science, technology, rational thought. So these are the kind of narratives that have been corrupting every aspect of our history and knowledge systems. We don't have the adhikara Adhikara has been taken away from the Hindus, and right now there's no agency. They greatly distort every aspect of our history, chronology, knowledge systems, and identity, and so on. So if we don't have a national identity today, it is because of this kind of history. It's a failure of positive narration of history. That is why most of us cannot connect to the past. We are all rudderless. We don't have a proper identity because we cannot connect to the Bharatiya civilization. So why am I saying all these things? As a scientist, I'm saying that we need a rational, scientific, logical analysis of data, models, methods, frameworks, and claims. We have to see, where did these narratives come from? How did they do these narratives? What data did they use? What kind of ideas went into these claims, and so on? And there is so much of data for history, whether it's archaeology, epigraphy, literature, foreign traveler accounts, astronomy, sciences, paleontology, and so many things are there. Anywhere, I say that anywhere you take in India, you lift a stone, there is data for history. So much of data is there. So the point is, we have to take the data appropriately and understand how to process this data. Where did the data come from? Provenance. Understand that. We have to understand the methodology we're applying, what kind of inference claims. So many models are possible. The linguistics model, archaeology model, genetics model, astronomy model. Every model logically, rationally understand the assumptions, understand how the data goes in, what kind of claims. Then we can claim that we are like Vaisheshika, perception and inference, Pratyaksha Anumana. This is what our rishis have told us, right? Rishi Kannada has told us these things. So this is the scientific method, basically. This is what we're doing, nothing new. The British didn't teach us this. India has been following this for thousands of years. So I am doing this evidence from looking at texts, archaeology, genetics, climatology, geology, astronomy, and so on. And I'm giving a rebuttal based on evidence to this enforced, I call it an enforced historiography in India. I'm giving a rebuttal to this. My first is the common sense. If we look at the internal evidence, our texts know nothing about the so-called Aryan invasion or migration. So I have put over here a sampling of some names of some of our intellectuals from the past. Every geography of India, North India, South India, East India, West India, whether it's very, very ancient times or more recent times, whether it's Abhinavagupta, Adi Shankara, Agastya, Randall, all the way to Yajnavalkya, Vyasa, anybody you take, who over here is saying that we are Aryans, they are Dravidians? Who is saying that we came from the mountains, far away from the mountains, and we settled in this land? Who over here is saying that we are North Indians, they are South Indians? Who is saying we fought to the people here and they pushed them to the South? In the South, who is saying that we used to live in the North, then we were pushed to the South, we are living here? Not one person. Not one person. There's simply no memory. Anywhere, any context, any literature of India, zero knowledge of invasion or migration. Look at the irony. 200 years ago, the British came and said Aryan invasion, and we believe this nonsense. Whereas our own evidence is saying there is simply zero evidence for this kind of things. I'd like to say. Then second, who do the Indians think that they are? Well, if we see the Bhagavata Purana, it is saying that there was a saintly king of Dravida Desha. He became known as Vaivasvata Manu. And it is through his sons Ikshvaku and his daughter Ila that India was populated. It's just a sample because the Indians themselves have some idea who they are. I'm not claiming that this is the truth. I'm just saying, what do the Indians think who they are? And our literature, here is one data point. This data point is saying that from the southern part of India, there was a king called Vaivasvata Manu, who through his progeny, India was populated. The Ailas and others are populated by this. So this is what this one tells us. If we take a look at the work of Parjitar, who was Parjitar? Parjitar was a British judge in India, in Kolkata, in 1920. True to his profession, a judge is expected to examine the evidence and then give his judgment. So he was a great scholar of Indian works. So he wrote this book, Indian Historical Tradition. So he studied all the Puranas and other such things. And he asked some questions. In 1920, everybody was saying Aryan invasion because of linguistic theory. So he said the current theory that Aryans invaded India must face an account for the following facts. Indian tradition knows nothing whatsoever of invasion. He says the northwestern Punjab is not regarded with special esteem. Even today, where are the most holy places for the Hindus? They are not in Punjab. They are in the east, in Varanasi. Banaras, Varanasi, Kashi has been the most sacred spot for Hindus rather than over here. If Aryans came through northwest India, we assumed some sacred places there. But that is not true. That is what he's saying. Like this, he lists out several things over here. And then he asks the question, all this copious tradition was falsely fabricated. Truth has been lost. If the Aryan invasion is correct, is this probable? If this tradition is false, Indian tradition is false, why, how, whose interest was it fabricated? And he himself is saying Indian tradition suggests a reverse origin for the Iranians, meaning that it is from India people have gone out and made the Iranians and the rest of the people. This is linguistically tenable. So this is what he analyzed as a judge in 1920, but his voice was drowned out because everybody was saying linguistic analysis, Aryan invasion, linguistic analysis. That is what was going on in 19. Just like today, everybody's saying AI, AI, AI. If you don't know artificial intelligence, you are obsolete. So that is how it is. Like that, those days, everybody was screaming these words over there. If we take a look at the South, Southern India, Tamil people have got 10,000 year memory of the Sangam period. So there is, for example, a 7th century work by a person called Appar, who is describing the Sangam period. The first period was in southern Madurai. It lasted 4,000 years and was swallowed by the sea. Second period was in a place called Kapatapuram for 3,700 years, swallowed by the sea. The third period is the present day Madurai for 1,850 years. So this is a strong memory in southern India, where in Tamil Nadu especially, where many people talk about a Sangam era. We see that Tamil people have got a memory of 10,000 years, but they have no memory of invasion. There is no memory of invasion anywhere, anywhere, there's no memory of invasion. So these are all the problems. I presented to you the internal evidence, just a sampling. I just gave one or two things here and there to show you the problems. If we take a look at archaeology and paleontology show very ancient people, it is settled land, but there is no ceramic record of Aryan invasion or migration. What do we mean by that? If somebody new comes to your land, they technology and innovation. Typically, those days, it was pottery. So the way of making pots will be different in different places. The style will be different, the pattern will be different, and so on. So suddenly in the archaeological layer, if you find a different kind of pots coming, that could be an indication of a new technology that has come into the land. So in India, there is no such ceramic record. I'm going to show you that. But before I show you that, I'll show you how ancient the land is. So what is the antiquity of human presence in India? Well, would you believe that in Tamil Nadu, at least, we have tools from 1 million years ago. And this is reported in this Nature paper by Shanti Papu, very famous researcher who's working even today in these areas. So she reported this paper in Science in 2011. This is a hand axe. This is there in a museum in Haryana. Even today, it is there. And they used OSL, its scientific method, to try and figure out how ancient are these samples. And it came out to be about 1 million years ago. So the question to ask is, 1 million years ago, who are the people living in India? Well, science tells us that the modern Homo sapien is more recent in the evolution chain. And 1 million years ago, the species that probably was living is something called Homo erectus. Now, there is no sharp distinction between the species. I mean, specialization is such a nebulous concept in the sense that we cannot say Homo erectus, Denisovan, Homo sapien, and so on, because there are no sharp changes, a continuous change, right? So at any rate, the domain of Homo erectus was all of these red areas that you see. They knew fire, lived in social groups. Their cranial capacity was about 1,000 cc. They used stone tools and such things. This is what we know about that era. Then Shanti Papu published one more paper. This was in, I think, 2017 or so, where she said that in Nature, in Atirampakam, 350,000 years ago, once again, she recovered stone tools. Tools like this. These tools are showing specialization. Some of these tools have got a long cutting edge, like to scrape the flesh from the skin, the animal skin. Some of them got a sharp point like a spearhead. Some of them got a sharp cutting edge. So these are tools meant for different purposes that implies a superior cranial capacity, thinking capacity, normally associated with Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens have got 1400 cc cranial capacity, so it's associated with them. And the only problem is these tools are so ancient in Tamil Nadu, 350,000 years ago, whereas science tells us that Homo sapiens, the modern Homo sapien, probably came around 200,000 years ago, which opens a question, who was living in India 350,000 years ago making these advanced tools? That's a question to come. Then we have the Narmada Man. Narmada Man is a skull found in Narmada Valley, 1982, by Arun Sonakia of GSI. And he initially thought it's a Homo erectus skull. Then this French investigator, he measured the cranial capacity and said it's like the modern human, 1400 cc, that is a cranial capacity. Kenneth Kennedy was a specialist, bone specialist, and he said there's an early Homo sapien sample. Once again, we have a problem, right? If Homo sapien has come on the scene from Africa 200,000 years ago, what are these specimens doing in India? We have two data points, at least over here, Shanti Papu's work and this one, that is showing modern-looking artifacts in India 350,000 years ago. Then we have from genetic studies, I'm showing the work of Stephen Oppenheimer. So maternal mitochondrial DNA studies is showing that about 200,000 years ago, those in the Olduvai Valley in Kenya and places like that in Africa. And at some point in time, 85,000 years ago or so, a group of these modern individuals, they, Homo sapiens rather, they left Africa, crossed the Gulf of Oman, and took this triangular part of India through the coast all the way to Sumatra and other such places. So this migration was between 85 to 75,000 years ago. So this is something that we can trace today based on the mutations carried by certain people in Africa, as well as India and Australia and places like that. We can infer this kind of migration pattern. So we know that there was an African input in 75,000 years ago in India. And this gentleman over here, his name is Veeramandi Antitheva. He lives somewhere near Madurai. So when National Geographic came to India to collect these genetic specimens, they found to their amazement, he's in this color community. He's a direct descendant of the first human settlers in India. He carries this marker. This marker, it merely means a mutation in the genetics called M130 marker. It reflects the first migrants to Southeast Asia and Australia from African coast 60,000 years ago. So he still carries that mutation. So that's an amazing thing that we have a direct descendant from that. And we have got artifacts like bows and arrows showing use of tools, even 48,000 years ago. This is from a Sri Lankan cave. This is the first bow and arrow technology outside of India. This is a paper that came out in 2020, and it shows a lot of spearheads, bone tools, a whole lot of tools over there. If you take a look at archaeological sites found in India, we got some sites 40,000 years ago in Soan Valley, in Bias River Valley, and other such valleys. We got several very, very ancient artifacts. Then later, and so on, all the way going to so-called Bronze Age, Iron Age. What we are seeing is all over India, we have found archaeological specimens implying that this is a settled. This is not a land that is open for people to come and settle wherever they like. People have been living here for a very, very long time. That is what these finds are telling us. This is an example in this paper called Antiquity in 2009. This is on Jwalapuram. In Jwalapuram, in this rock shelter, 35,000 years, these are kind of artifacts found. This is a collection of items. This is in Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh, where you see some rock paintings 35,000 years ago. In Kerala, in Edakal Caves, 9,000 proto-writing. In Ketavaram, in Andhra Pradesh, 8,000 years ago. This is again in Bhimbetka, showing horse and rider. In Birhana, Rakigadi in Haryana, 10,000 years ago. Ramachandrapuram, Telangana, around 12,000 years ago. So we're finding a whole lot of artifacts, that is the point. And very surprisingly, in the south, we got very deep antiquity. There's a place called Pumpuhar, is in the south over here. It is where the Kaveri River meets the Bay of Bengal. So it was not the capital, but an important city of the Cholas in 300 BC. It was a harbor frequented in literature by a whole lot of people in commerce and so on, mentioned in literary works like Silappatikaram and so on. A paper came by Professor Ramaswamy in 2022 in Current Science. So he did some underwater investigations in the Bay of Bengal. Why is this important? Well, we know that 18,000 years ago, we had something called the last glacial maximum. That is when there was a mini ice age. When that ice age was happening all over the globe, a lot of water was locked up in ice. So the sea level dropped significantly. How significantly? We know today 125 meters or 400 feet. 400 feet below the present day sea level, that was the sea level around 18,000 years ago. This tells us that if humans lived in India in that time frame, we might have had some coastal civilizations. People who rely on fishing and other things. They have lived by the coast, and we think they could have been like that. So what he has found is, this is the coastline of present-day India. This is the Bay of Bengal, about 15 kilometers outside. He has found over here evidence of harbors, man-made structures, submarine ridges, and so on. And moving further, he's even shown these various things. For example, past shoreline, 20,000 years before present at 125 meters. This area called 9 over here is 15,000 years ago, 11,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago, different depths in different places. This is what he's showing in this paper. And some of the artifacts that he's found from under the sea, different time periods. They're not the same time period, but he's found different time periods. He's used sonar and remote sensing to do these kind of data. And he's found evidence when the shoreline was changing over time. Why is the shoreline changing? Because as the ice melts, the water level keeps rising, submerging the ancient coastal civilizations. So he's found evidence where the shoreline is coming towards the shore over here, so submerging all these places. So different evidences have been found. So very, very interesting. Now, I talked about 18,000 years ago. Talking now at Birana, I started 1 million years ago. Then I went to 350,000 years ago. Then I went to 40,000 years ago. Then I went to 18,000 years ago. Now I'm coming to 10,000 years ago. So about 9,500 years before present in Birana, we have got artifacts, what we call today as pre-Hakra or pre-Harappan artifacts. This is in a paper by B.R. Mani, Rao, and others. So these are the kind of artifacts that we have found over here. And going on to rock art in Maharashtra. So today, if you take a drone and with a video camera in it and go up in the air, you'll see all these things on the floor. Many huge patterns like this are drawn. And from Deccan College, Vasant Shinde has come with some statement that these could be at least around 10,000 years old. Some of these rock paintings over here could be 10,000 years old. Then a very surprising paper came in 2003 in Episodes from this CSIR lab called NIO in Chennai by these authors. So they were tasked with laying a submarine line for internet or the coast of India. And so they were doing sonar mapping. When they're doing sonar mapping, they discovered a major artifact running for about 9 kilometers long, 40 meters below the sea level, which they suspected was a man-made structure. They also got a piece of wood, which they did carbon dating in Hanover, as well as in Hyderabad. And it gave a date of around 9,900 years before present or 8,500 years before present for that piece of wood dredged up from this particular area. So some people say that could this be the ancient Dwaraka and so on. But very interesting to know that, yes, there were coastal civilizations even in that early period of time. It's not a surprise for us because we know from climatology that there was an ice age, mini ice age, sea level was down. Eventually, these lands got submerged. We know that, so it is not very surprising. And from Harappa, we got a lot of beautiful artifacts. You can see from 3,500 BC onwards. And today in Sanauli, we have got even chariots. Chariots have been found about 30 kilometers north of New Delhi. You find Sanauli, where the archaeologist Manjul is talking about several chariot burials. And tentatively, the date is anywhere from 2000 BC to 1800 BC. We have these artifacts over here. In the south, Kiradi, in the banks of river Vaigai, which is Madurai, we are finding that urban artifacts in the south, this is the earliest we have found, 600 BCE, plus Some of the earliest Brahmi we have found in the country is not in Ashokan pillars, but we're finding it in Kiradi. In the south, we're finding around 600 BC, we have found Brahmi scripts and so on. Well, even earlier than this, Professor S.R. Rao has said in Bet Dwaraka, he has found something he calls a transitive Brahmi script, transitioning from Harappan script into Brahmi, going to 1500 BC. So such a claim is also there in Bet Dwaraka. In a place called Adi Chanalur in southern India, we are finding many, many artifacts. For example, these gold diadems. Even today in India, in marriage time, the groom wears a small gold pattam. We call it a pattam. This is the kind of diadem found over there. Iron implements, bronze of Shakti. They call it a mother goddess. Remember, the Marxists are great at subverting Hindu systems. So they called it mother goddess. In India, we don't know what mother goddess is, but we know what Shakti is. No problem. We know what Shakti is. So anyway, from 1500 BCE, and so several artifacts have been found over here. In Mahabalipuram, when there was a tsunami early in this time frame, so we find that uncovered brick temples 2000 years ago, clearly showing that even 2000 years ago in southern part of India, we had a Vedic culture over there. Contrary to what the Dravidians and Christians say today, we are finding these kinds of things. So why am I presenting these things? Because the evidence I'm showing to you is from archaeology and paleontology. I started 1 million years ago, 350,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago, 18,000 years ago, 3,500 BCE, which is approximately 5,000 years ago, all the way to Kiradi, 2,600 years ago. Then I'm asking, are there ceramic changes in 1,500 BC, 3,500 years ago? And there's absolutely none. So what we find in India is a different kinds of pottery. So for example, ochre-colored pottery, OCP, or black and red ware, painted gray ware, not black polished ware. This kind of pottery technology is found endemically in India, in different parts of India. We have that. This is not a very surprising thing. But then when the Marxists try to present this work, you can go to Wikipedia or places like that and see it. When they present OCP pottery, they show it very mischievously only in this time frame between 1900 BC to 1300 BCE. They show OCP pottery here to show that Aryans have brought this technology into India. But then if you read the by Deepak Nair, this is the paper by Deepak Nair, ochre-colored pottery and the problems in it, 2012 in this paper. So he's saying OCP pottery has been found co-Digian 3700 BC to 3000 BCE from Lal Killa, from all of these places. So from this time period onwards, we have OCP pottery. With this time period meaning 3300 BC onwards, we have that. What does it mean? It means there is no change in pottery record. The OCP pottery, which they said is the proof of Aryan invasion, is not true. That's a false data point because OCP pottery is there in India from 3500 BC, much before the so-called Aryan invasion. It is already there. Okay, so the summary from archaeology is we have material evidence for human presence in India from 1 million years ago, artifacts in all regions in India. And the question to ask is it possible for such a vast population to be replaced genetically? If not replaced, can we be genetically overwhelmed? Can a new population come, kill off the old population and they survive? Can that be possible? Why is there no evidence of invasion, large-scale movement? Why do texts not mention the inflow of outsiders? Why are there no ceramic records of inflow of outsiders? So these are questions we must logically ask because we are proceeding in a rational thinking way with evidence. We must ask these questions. So if we take a look at the next major area, genetics. Genetics is inconclusive today on the ancestry of Indians. This is what we can say. So does it show of migration? There are several techniques in genetics. I'm not going to go into details because there's a 2-hour lecture in itself. There are some mathematical techniques used in genetics today. For example, the sensation index. This one says, I'll just give a brief idea. Supposing we take a set of all the mutations found in North Indians, South Indians, East Indians, West Indians. We take their blood sample or saliva sample, analyze in the lab and say, what are the mutations they're carrying? And we will make a list of us, all those mutations. Then if I take some fellow from the street of New Delhi and see what are the mutations you have, I'll see what is the distance, mathematical distance between your mutations and this India superset of mutations I have. I'll give you a number. Then I can go to the south and take some forward and ask, what are your mutations? What is your distance? So the hope they had is that when they do this mathematical clustering, there'll be many buckets, North Indian bucket, South Indian bucket, East Indian. Or they thought because of the caste system, there'll be Brahmins will be in one cluster, Kshatriyas in another cluster, Vaishyas, Shudras in other clusters. They thought these kind of things will happen. But nothing like that happened. So many paper after paper came showing that all Indians have this mathematical index in the same range, meaning that we are so thoroughly mixed genetically going back thousands of years that there is no way you can say he's a North Indian, he's a South Indian, he's a Brahmin, he's a Kshatriya. By taking your genetics, nobody can say this. Nobody. We are one people at genetic level. Then later on, people started using a maternal mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosomal studies to try to say, was there a foreign DNA in India, especially a marker called R1A1A1 around 1500 BC. Problem is, it became so controversial. So many researchers were saying, no, R1A is originated in India. Some people saying R1A originated in Central Asia. So how can one say what is the source and what is the origin based on today's data? How can you do that? There's a problem over there. But mathematical techniques were used, which are questionable. I talked about that. Then since 2010 or so, people use something called genome-wide. We have got 22 chromosomes and one pair of gender chromosomes. That's why we are humans, right? So instead of using just the gender chromosomes, they said, why don't we use all the chromosomes to try to see if there are hints over there? But that research is very, very sensitive to the data that is selected. India's got a population of more than 1 billion people. Can you take a data set of 100 individuals and can you get a representative sample of the entire India? That is the issue. And so the conclusions that you draw from here are not really significant. Harappa genome that was decoded recently that suggests a source population from Indus Valley itself. I'll talk about these things. So the biggest name today in genetics is from medical school, called David Reich. So he initially presented a work where he proposed that in 7000 BCE, Iranians, they came to India, northern India, southern India, and settled here. Then after 3000 BC, from Central Asia, between Caspian Sea, Black Sea, Central Asia, these people have entered into India in 1500 BC, the Aryans, and they have become what he called the ancestral North Indians. And these people are the ancestral South Indians. And he said there's a difference between those two. And this is the claim that he made. When he made this claim in this paper, in this talk rather, in 2018, I criticized this work. And I said that, look here, we have got a lot of data. We have got data like the Vedas and Puranas. They talk about the Dasaragnya. After Dasaragnya, you have the Anus and the Drihyu who migrate out of India. They go out of India. Where is that in your data? Where is that data over there? We have got data points on Bhagavata Purana, Vishnu Purana, Vayu Purana, Brahmanda Purana, Matsya Purana, Rig Veda. All of these are talking about these migrations. Am I going to discard the evidence in my text? So many texts are talking about it. And am I going to discard that because you're telling me something? So I have data here and I need to see that signature in this. That is not there. We know Saraswati River dried up in 1900 BC. There was outward migration. Where is that data over here? That data is not there. So I said red flags are going up. If you cannot account for these data points, then something is wrong. So I said red flag. So I called out many, many problems in my talk over here on sensitivity of the data, the mathematical methods, and so on. And I said, what will happen if David Reich takes out some pieces of data from his studies and puts new data into his model? Will it still converge mathematically to the same results? That is what I questioned in this talk. As if by magic, in 2019, a paper in Science with Narasimhan and others, where he added 11 more samples from Iran, Gonur in Iran, and so on. And when he did that, his mathematical models converge. It invalidated this earlier claim that Iranians have come into India 7,000 BCE. That claim he removed, but he's sticking on to this claim that 1,500 BCE, these Aryans have entered into India. So what he's saying is that these are mathematical studies and we have to scrutinize them. If we scrutinize them, we'll find a lot of things. This paper came out from Vasant Shinde and also David Reich and others, Neeraj Rai and others. This came out in Cell, and they were able to analyze from one skeleton they got in Harappa. After a lot of difficulty, they finally got some usable DNA material. They did some analysis, and their final result is that there is this orange thing shown here, something what they call Indus Valley climb, which has a small amount of Andamanese hunter-gatherer with a common ancestor going back 60,000 years ago. That migration that I showed to you earlier, African migration, it goes back to a very, very ancient period of time. Then later on, we are seeing around 10,000 BC, 8,000 BC, this orange things over here, Iranian hunter-gatherer, Iranian herders, Iranian farmers. Over here, they're mixing with Turkey, Anatolia. This is mixing in Iran, Iranian people around 4,000 BC. So even this model can be interpreted this way, that it is an out of India migration. So people are leaving India and have gone out and they are mixed over here. So this is what even this paper is saying. So bottom line, the confidence level with ancestral genetics methodology. Genetics is very, very critical and important today for a lot of analysis. There is no doubt about it. But how are we using this for the problem of ancestral genetics? That is the issue over here. And if somebody says presence or absence of genetic marker, there is absolutely no dispute. I can come here and say that, take my blood sample and say, I have got a particular marker. No dispute, because you can go to a lab and verify it. So no problem with that. But then somebody says 20% of the markers that you have has come from Central Asia. That is a problem. How did you get that? How did you get the percentages? How did you get the direction? All those issues come about because these are mathematical methods. We can question them. Then finally, they say that we have inherited so much from some ancient sample. This is a direction of flow. I have zero confidence in those kind of studies. That's why I show a downward arrow. There are concerns with methodology due to which results cannot be global. So they have to say, with the narrow data and methods I have, this is what I can claim, rather than huge claims saying that I analyze 100 samples, I now know how Indian population came about. That is not tenable. That is not okay. That is what I'm trying to emphasize over here. And whatever I said in this talk was actually reproduced in a paper by this gentleman over here in 2020 Nature. A paper came out saying PCA analysis in genetic studies is highly biased and must be reevaluated. And he's showing in this paper, I said, if, for example, I think there is a difference between Northern Indians and Southern Indians, then the question is, in my sample studies, what is my population size from South? What is my population size from the North? And how do I adjust these sizes? How do I take the data, sample the data? All this has a bearing on the outcome, statistical results. So I talked about those things, and he's saying the same thing. PCA can be easily manipulated to generate desired outcomes. PCA adjustment yielded unfavorable outcomes in association studies. It is not reliable, robust, or replicable, as the field assumes. And he raised a concern about the validity, and he concluded that as a biasing role, up to 216,000 studies should be reevaluated. So this paper is basically echoing whatever I have said in this talk of mine. It is saying the same thing. All right, genetics is a little difficult to understand. So just know that there are some questions on that. We will leave that and go to other areas. So climatology. We have evidence that our Bhartiya civilization was punctured. It was punctured 2000 BCE because we had a monsoon failure. I make that claim because of a before and after. So we know from nature, for example, there's a 200-year that doomed the Indus Valley 4,200 years ago. Today in India, if monsoon fails for 1 year, we got crop failure. If monsoon fails for 2 or 3 years, then the farmers can't afford to pay the loans. They'll all commit suicide. Huge problem. GDP goes down. I want you to imagine 200 years of monsoon failure. This is what climatology is telling us, that India experienced that. Plus, we have had earlier disasters in India. 8,200 years ago, 5,900 years ago, and so on. So we know that ancient India, people lived by the riverbeds. It is not like today's India. Today you can have city like Bangalore. Bangalore has got no river nearby. There's no river. But we use electricity and pumps to get water from Kaveri, pump water to Bangalore and groundwater. That's how we survive. In those days, you have to live next to a river. If the river has become dry, you leave everything and you go where it is. That is how life was in those days. So we have papers that talk about this. This is a paper in Nature where these researchers are saying that there was a monsoon failure in India about in this sample data from all of these areas. And the methodology is not very important, but they're using the isotopes of oxygen, the O18 isotope, because the prevalence, the ratio of normal oxygen to isotopic oxygen can be used by climate scientists to say whether there was a dry period or a wet period. And because of something called half-life of these samples, they're able to sample these things even today and talk to you about the past. They're able to do that. So in their research, the orange bar are the dry periods and the blue arrows are the wet periods. And this is the timeline from our present time, 2000 current era, going to the past up to 4000 BCE. They're showing between 2000 BC and so on, India experienced a very, very dry period. So this is science telling us these things, that we have this very, very dry period. And we have got evidence of that indirectly in other ways. For example, agricultural genomics shows out of India. This is a paper that came in Science in 2019, where these researchers are saying suddenly 4,200 years ago in northern Iraq, southern Turkey, the Indian cattle went up, population went up. A humped bull. Any Indian village you go, you'll find this bull. Special name is there for that. It's called zebu or Bos indicus. So this Bos indicus animal is very, very suitable for dry climates. Adapted to drought, right? They don't die easily. But Central Asian cattle were not at all that strong. They would die. There's no water, they would die. So what these people, researchers are saying is, in this Bronze Age, suddenly widespread integration of Bos indicus from Indus Valley. This happened 4,200 years ago, thanks to a multi-century drought. And the Indian cattle enhanced the herd survival. So it is very, very welcome in these lands. That is what this paper is saying. This, for example, Guardian seed showing the Indian buffalo around 2200 BCE. This is in a Paris museum even today. One more paper from a Russian scientist where he is connecting the spread of the zebu cattle along with markers in genetics, human markers in genetics, along with language dispersal. And he's saying this is a time frame when Indians have left India and gone out of India, taking language also with them. That is why European languages are related to Sanskrit. He's saying that is the reason, because this is the migration that happened. He's linking these three things over here. And we have evidence in India, for example, in 2018 from Lucknow, we have Thakur and others, that paddy was cultivated in Ganga Plain, going back to what they refer to as Holocene era, about at least around 9,000 years ago. Paddy has been grown in India. So this is implying Neolithic, the Neolithic age, where you go from hunter-gatherer to settled agricultural societies. This has begun in India by 9,000 years ago. That is what this is telling us over here. This also invalidates the claim that agriculture was invented in Turkey 7,000 BCE and spread to India. A lot of Western scientists maintain this position. So this is invalidating that particular claim. Then we have a proxy that comes from mouse migration. So this researcher in 2007 in genome biology, he wanted to see the genetic ancestor of the common house mice. Where is the genetic ancestor? To his surprise, he found that the genetic ancestor of a house mice is from India. The mouse has gone to Madagascar, to Europe, to Northern Africa, Southeast Asia, China, and everywhere. And we know that whenever you store paddy in your warehouse or your barn, mice are going to come. Mice will come wherever you store food grains. We know that, right? And when humans are migrating, the mice are following them. So the mice are a proxy for human migrations. That is what we are seeing. So we are seeing here also indirectly that it is migrations out of India that is leading these mice also to get out. And we have got another paper came out in 2022 in Nature that is talking in archaeobotany. How did millets come to this part of the world in Sumeria, basically? So this red dot is first millennium, yellow dot is third millennium, and you find in India some of the oldest artifacts, through the maritime trade route. This is from Lothal and places like that, going to Dilmun, going up to here. This is where Babylon was. Babylon, the Kassites, the Elamites, they're all living in this area. And so it is showing that Indian millets have gone the sea route, and that is how it has come over here. This also fits with the traditional accounts of Sumerian people. Sumerian people have a traditional account that says their knowledge came from the east. People from the east came by boat and taught them agriculture, laws, how to worship, all these things. So this is their popular thinking. But we are having scientific evidence now showing that agriculture has migrated from here. I'll skip this. So that is one more area. So we genetics, we talked about genomics, archaeology, monsoons, climatology. Now we talk about Vedic astronomy. In India, we have got internal evidence that is talking about great in some of the Sanskritam texts that we have. Evidence is there from our astronomy. So that I'm going to show that to you presently. The Westerners, they learnt about Indian astronomy through these transmitters. Cassini, Lee Gentle, Euler, Bailey, all these people, when they encountered Indian astronomy, they were so shocked, and they were so, they wrote in very praising terms. They were so admired Indian works. So they wrote in very good terms about the antiquity of Indian astronomy and so on. But then William Jones, he started the controversy. Everybody that has shown red font, they believe that Indian astronomy is not that ancient, because here is where the linguistic theory started with him. About when they saw that Sanskrit, Latin, and Greek are related, they proposed there was Aryan invasion in 1500 BC. Aryans have come to India with an oral tradition, and all the Vedic literature was composed in India in 1200 BCE, including the Vedic astronomy works. And they questioned, how can they show great antiquity? They cannot. So their position was, how old is Indian astronomy? Where did it originate? They presumed it has come from the Greeks and Babylonians. And they wanted to say, what did they learn from them? Because of linguistic theory. So everybody shown red here, the Western interlocutors, they still attack Indian astronomy, including Pingree, who passed away in 2005. All of these people believe that. But the people who wrote in white font, they believed in the antiquity of Indian astronomy. So in India, our astronomy model is one of nakshatras and Rashi. Our ancestors observed that every day when at least in the evening, when you observe when the sun comes, when the moon rises over the eastern horizon, it is appearing against some star could be in the background. They also observed that every day the moon is rising at a different time, about 48 minutes or so. It is rising at a different time. Because it is rising at a different time every day, the background star is different. They also saw that it takes 27 days for the moon to come back to the same star in the background. So they divided the entire sky. The ecliptic is a path of the sun. So they divided that into 27 segments of 13 1/3 degrees each. And they called each of that as a nakshatra. And to remember these things, they had the story in the Puranas that Chandra married the 27 daughters of King Daksha. And every one of these nakshatras was given the name of one of Chandra's wives. Chitra, Visheka, Jeshta, and Shravana, Kritika. All these were the names of the moon's wives. And he would visit one wife every day. So that was the thinking, right? So it takes 27 days for the moon to go around this completely. Indians also had the notion of a month, lunar month. If the full moon appears in the Chitra nakshatra, that month is called a Chaitra Masa. In some parts of India, especially the north, they use a full moon, Paurnami, as the indicator. And in southern part of India, they use Amavasya, or the new moon, which is why there is a 15-degree offset in Chaitra Masa. In the north and south, we have a slight offset. Indians also wanted to track the movement of the sun. So they said that the sun enters into one Rashi. They divided the entire ecliptic into 12 segments of 30 degrees each. And they marked Shankranti. Shankranti was when the sun enters into each of these. So Indians observed both the nakshatra system as well as the Rashi system or the lunisolar calendar to keep passage of time. If we look at the names of the nakshatras in our ancient texts, Vedanga Jyotisha, Surya Siddhanta, we have a listing that are more or less the same from Kritika all the way to Bharani. And this list will keep changing. And this is very deep. I'm not going to go, why does the list change? The list will keep changing over time. Maybe in a different talk, I will talk about IKS. I'll talk to you about astronomy in greater depth. But we are seeing that in Vedanga Jyotisha as well as Surya Siddhanta, we're seeing same names. When the British came to India, they wanted to find out what these nakshatras were. So when the Pandits were pointing them out, Kritika was Eta Tauri, Rohini was Alpha Tauri, Mrigashirša was Lambda Orionis, and so on. And Revati, my own nakshatra, was Zeta Pisceum, and so on. So they made these identifications. So even today, we can identify these things with this kind of a map. We see that all over India, we had the common astronomy model. This is not an astronomy model special to Haryana, Punjab alone. This was a model used throughout India. The evidence is there, whether you go to Sanskritam, Telugu, Kannada, Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi, whichever language you go, you are finding same nakshatra names, right? So that means the nakshatra use is the same. But we are seeing some regional divergences because the model is so old. So for example, Ardra nakshatra has become Tiruvadirai in Tamil and Malayalam. Ashlesha has become Ailiam. So like this, small divergences are there, but essentially the model is still the same. This is what we see. And this is telling us how ancient the model is. So to understand Indian astronomy, we must understand certain things that the Earth is doing. We all know Earth is rotating once in 24 hours, night and day. We all know Earth is going around the sun. It takes 365.24 days. We all know that, Uttarayana, Dakshinayana, we know these things. In addition to that, the Earth is doing three more things. One is the orbital cycle is going from circular to elliptical, and this cycle takes about 100,000 years to complete. There's another cycle called axial precession. See, the Earth, if you look at my hand in the camera, you'll find that the Earth is rotating like this from west to east, and it is pointing to the sky, where the axis of rotation is pointing to the sky. Where it is pointing to, we are calling Polaris today, or Dhruva nakshatra, we are calling that, right? Dhruva Tara, because saying that. So that is the pole star. It appears to be constant in the sky. That axis of rotation is also not constant, but it is tracing a slow path in the sky. It is taking 26,000 years to complete this. The analogy that I give people is, if you're played at the top as a child, you tie the string around the top, then you twirl that string, and the top starts spinning very, very fast. As the top is spinning fast, it's got a slow wobble sometimes, if you can imagine that. So the fast spin is 24 hours. The slow wobble that the Earth is doing is 26,000 years. Because of this, the nakshatra at the vernal equinox point, which always mark the New Year in India. New Year in India means vernal equinox point. Indians would say, what is the nakshatra at the vernal equinox point? Will that reference be the same? It will not be the same. Over thousands of years, that reference point will change because Earth is doing this spinning. Because of this, that vernal equinox point will change. So this is very important for us to understand that axial precession. Because of that, we can date Indian astronomy beautifully, scientifically, precisely, we can date these things. So that said, the first question is, what is the antiquity of Vedanga Jyotisha? Vedanga Jyotisha appears both in Rig Vedanga Jyotisha as well as Yajur Vedanga Jyotisha. And several people tried to date this, including, can somebody please remove these things? Ask the organizer to remove these markings. So people like Weber, Pillai, William Jones, Tilak, Colebrook, many people try to date this, and they propose so many dates, different dates are over there. The closest was Dikshit and Colebrook. They came into this date. And Abhyankar is describing that Vedanga Jyotisha is saying winter solstice occurred with the sun and moon came together in the Dhanishta Nakshatra. important data point for us. That data point is saying when the sun and moon, the longitude, where is the sun and moon at the winter solstice? What is the longitude? What is the nakshatra at that longitude? That nakshatra should be Dhanishta nakshatra. That is what Lagada, who is attributed to Vedanga Jyotisha, that is what he's saying over here. So our task is to find out when was this true, because this is not true today. Today at winter solstice, we don't have Dhanishta nakshatra at that point. So if we take a look at the planetarium software, what is this, what I'm showing to you? If you take the latitudes and longitudes on Earth and project them to the sky, they become celestial coordinates. So this circle that you see here, this is the celestial North Pole. And these circles are Earth's latitudes projected to the sky. And at 0 degrees, it becomes the, am I showing this correctly? Yes, I guess I am. Let me count it and see. So anyway, this is the horizon line over here. So if this is 90 degrees, because North Pole is 90 degrees, 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 0. 0 is special on Earth. 0 degrees is equator on the Earth. In the sky, it becomes celestial equator. On the day of the equinox, the sun will be exactly on the celestial equator. We know that. We know Uttarayana 6 months, Dakshinayana 6 months. Uttarayana, when it goes northward, sun will come up to 23 degrees north. Then it starts going south. When it is going south, it will cross the 0 degree line and go to minus 23 degrees south. That is what we are seeing over here. So if this is 0 degrees, this is minus 10, minus 20, minus 24. So when the sun has gone to solstice, in the longitude, it is Dhanishta over here. So to get this date, I had to go back in the planetarium software to 1440 BCE. So this archaeoastronomy, using today's tools of planetarium software, we can tell you how old Vedanga Jyotisha is from the observation of Dhanishta Nakshatra at the winter solstice point. Then we have one more very, very interesting story in the Vishnu Purana. In the Vishnu Purana, we are told the story of Dhruva. Everybody knows the story of Dhruva, right? So Dhruva had an unhappy childhood. Why? Because his father decides to marry a younger woman. And one fine day when Dhruva wants to sit on his father's lap, younger wife comes and pushes him away, saying, you have no place over here. So poor boy starts crying and goes to the mother, where is my place in this place? Mother gives him karma theory, all those things. He's not interested. So he goes up to do tapasya. He wants to ask Bhagavan himself, where is my place in the universe? One fine day, Bhagavan comes to him, what do you want, Dhruva? Dhruva wants nothing. But Bhagavan says, I will make you into a star in the sky. Your position will be above everybody. Everybody will go pradakshina around you. That's why it's called Dhruva, right? Everybody will go pradakshina around you. But Bhagavan says one more thing. He says, your mother, Sumati, she will also be near you. She will also be near you. This is a very important data point. So when the Vishnu Purana was composed, when the story of Dhruva came over there, Bhagavan is saying, not only will Dhruva be there, the pole star, but his mother Sumati will be there near him. So that is our data point. Take a look at the picture on the right over here. This is 2022 when I made this. Today, our Dhruva is this one, Polaris, what we call Polaris, because of the same precision. Remember the precision, 26,000 years, where we are pointing to. So today we are pointing to Dhruva. Around Dhruva, there is no bright companion. But if I go back in time to 2800 BCE, there's one more star called Thuban. Thuban was at the pole star position, and near Thuban, we are finding a companion. This is amazing. This is amazing because we have so many Western people who are saying that Puranas were composed in 300 current era in the Gupta time frame. Gupta time frames where Puranas were written and all this kind of nonsense. But the data in the Puranas is pointing to an exceedingly ancient period of time. So this is one such example, Vishnu Purana, where Vishnu is saying that Dhruva, your mother will be nearby. This can be dated 2800 BC. This story is not true today. You have to go back in time. So when Vishnu Purana was written, the time frame probably was around 2800 BCE. Shatapatha Brahmana, Rishi Yajnavalkya. Yajnavalkya is telling the Vedic practitioner how to find the east direction. Why? Because the Brahmana is basically a text that is telling all the rituals, how the rituals must be performed, Vedic rituals must be performed, right? So he is saying, everybody will say how stupid it is. Wherever the sun is coming, that is the east direction. But that is not true. Uttarayana, Dakshinayana, sun is going from 23 degrees to minus 23.3 degrees. That means every day the sun's position is changing. Where is the east direction? East direction is only when the sun is on the equinox. That is the true east direction. And Yajnavalkya is saying that the sun does not, rather, the Kritika Nakshatra does not move away from the eastern quarter. You can set up your Vedic fires under the Kritika Nakshatra. This is what Yajnavalkya is saying. So Tilak had observed this one and he's calling this out. So I have simulated this in the planetarium software. And what you see here, once again, this is 90 degrees, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 0. 0 is the celestial equator, right? The sun is exactly in the celestial equator. And this is a horizon line. Horizon means the ground line. The sun is below the ground line means it is dark in the skies over here. So Vedic practitioner wakes up before the sun rises, has ritual bath, comes outside and sees in the east, and I see Kritika over there because Kritika is right over here. And 1 hour later, the sun rises and Kritika cannot be seen, but you got 2 data points. You can draw a straight line, put the bricks over here, start your home over here, right? So this is what Yajnavalkya is talking about. To simulate this date, we had to go to 2982 BCE. Staggering period of time to do this. So we are also seeing an ancient epoch in the tables. The Puranas talk about Kali Yuga. Aryabhatta, Surya Siddhanta, they are talking about Pulisa Siddhanta, Brahmagupta. Al-Baruni also talks about that. In Karnataka, Aihole Temple epigraphy, that is talking about that. Cassini, he got hold of some astronomy tables from Thailand. And in 1600s, he studied those tables and he said that the calendar system here has got the longitude of Benares and Ujjain and has got an absolute date of 3102 BCE. He found that in addition. Later, Playfair, Bentley, Colebrook, Burgess, they all determined this epoch in Surya Siddhanta, referring to this. It turns out to be a conjunction of planets, sun and moon in the Revati Nakshatra. And this is same as the start of Kali Yuga. So what we're seeing over here is, I've simulated this. If you take the date to February 18th, 3102 BCE, we are seeing that the sun is over here, Chandra is over here, Guru and Shukran, Jupiter and Venus, almost on top of each other over here. Revati Nakshatra is over here. Mangala is Mars, Buddha is Mercury, Shani is a little further away, Saturn, but they're all more or less clustered over here. So this is the clustering that all the Indian calendars are referring to. Even today, Orthodox Hindu, when he's doing his prayer, Sankalpa and others, he will refer to the start of Kali Yuga, how many days have elapsed from Kali Yuga. So our civilization has got a deep memory of this particular conjunction of all these planets that happen in Kali Yuga. All of us perhaps know the story of Aditi, right? Aditi is the mother of the gods. So Aditi and her co-sister Diti, they married the Rishi Kashyapa, and through Kashyapa, you got the Adityas, Rudras, Devas, and Daityas, all these things. We know about all of these things. But what is interesting to me is the Aitriya Brahmana. In the Aitriya Brahmana, there is a particular passage over there. That passage is saying the yajna, the sacrifice, went away from the Devas. Devas were unable to perform any further ceremony. They did not know where it had gone to. They said to Aditi, let us know the sacrifice through thee. Aditi said, Tatastu, but I will choose a bone from you. They said, choose. She chose this bone. All sacrifices shall commence with me and end with me. This is so difficult to understand. What does she mean by this? What is going on over here? So some experts have pointed this out, people like Tilak, Abhyankar. They said that Indians always follow the celestial calendar in the skies, right? When that calendar has gone wrong, for example, we might say vernal equinox will happen when the nakshatra or there's Rohini, Mrigashirsha, whatever. We might say something like that, right? But because of precision, I told you the 26,000 year cycle, after 1,000 years, that is no longer true. When that is not true, when do you do your ceremonies? When do you observe your festivals? So it is reflecting the confusion of our ancestors who did not know when to do these things. So they have reset the calendar to Aditi. They have reset the calendar to Aditi, and Aditi is saying, the new year will begin with me and end with me. That is what she's saying. New year begins with me and ends with me. So we should now see when was Aditi at the vernal equinox position, because vernal equinox is always New Year in India. So when was Aditi at vernal equinox position? That is point number one. Point number two, what is Aditi in our nakshatra model? In our nakshatra model, it turns out that Aditi is part of the Punarvashu nakshatra. In Punarvashu nakshatra, we got two stars, Diti and Aditi. This is Diti over here, this is Aditi here. In the Western tradition, this is called Castor and Pollux. Castor and Pollux are Diti and Aditi in the Indian tradition. Collectively, we call them Punarvashu. So once again, if this is 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 0, 0 is the celestial equator, yellow line, celestial equator. So when the sun is in the celestial equator, at the longitude, we will have Punarvashu if we go back in time to 6000 BCE. Very, very ancient period of time. If we go there, that is when we find Punarvashu over here at the celestial equator. So very interesting to see these ancient periods of time. In the Surya Siddhanta, there is a reference where all the planets are coming together in the Mesha Rashi. So the Mesha Rashi is basically Aries, and this can be simulated to 6779 BCE. We have the story of twins. So in Rig Veda and other places, many, many verses are there for Rig Veda. So we are told the story that one fine day, Surya becomes so brilliant that his wife could know a Sanjana, could not take or Sandhya. Some people call it Sandhya, some people say Sanjana. So anyway, she could not take the heat. She leaves her husband and she goes off to the cooler region. And one fine day, she leaves a shadow Chaya in her place. One fine day, Surya discovers a deception and he asks, where is my wife? Chaya says she's gone to the southern region. So Surya also goes southern region. He finds she's taken the form of a horse. This is a Ravi Verma painting. So Surya also takes a form of a horse, and in their union, Ashwini Kumaras are born. Ashwini Kumaras are healer physicians, also associated with horse and other such things. So the interesting thing is, we learn that Surya has gone to southern region, the cooler region. When he goes to southern solstice, then it's cold in the northern hemisphere. India is in the northern hemisphere, right? And this verse in Rig Veda is also saying Ushas. Ushas is a goddess of dawn. It is saying, awaken the Ashwins for their share of the Vedic sacrifice. So clearly, it's a reference to Ashwins are also rising at dawn. It's called heliacal rising. Along with the sun, Ashwins must be rising at winter solstice position. So to decipher these things, we can once again go back in time to 7200 BC. Staggering. I know some of you are uncomfortable listening to this. But then if you take a look at this, 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 0, minus 10, minus 20, minus 24. The sun is at this point, we are seeing that Ashwins are over here, the longitude position. So this is clearly telling us that the story of Ashwins can be dated to 7200 BCE. I recommend that you see an article of mine on medium.com, rajvedam.medium.com, where I've given you some scientific validation of this, independent scientific validation of a solar flare that happened in 7176 BCE that can be tied to the story. So please do take a look at that. That gives you amazing scientific validation of the Surya story that we're seeing to 7176 BCE. So bottom line, we've seen Antiquity of Vedic astronomy, Vedanga Jyotisha, 1400 BC, Dhruva story, 2800 BC, Shatapatha Brahmana, 2980, Kali Yuga, 3102, Aitreya Brahmana, 6000 BC, Ashwins at this time, 7000 BCE. We are also going to see that these dates that look so strange to us matches perfectly with archaeological findings. I'm going to show you a few things a little later on. So we can now rebut this Aryan invasion because so many Vedic concepts are in place in India much before the so-called Aryan invasion theory of 1500 BC. So Max Muller, when he proposed a linguistic analysis, he said there is a Chandas period, Mantra period, Brahmana period, Sutra period. And he said earliest books of Rig Veda was composed in the Chandas period, 1200 to 1000 BCE. The Brahmana period is 800 to 600 BC when the Aranyakas, Upanishads, and all these things are done. Vedangas, including Vedanga Jyotishas, 600 to 200 BC in Sutra period. But now in astronomy, we are seeing that Vedanga Jyotishas 1400 BC, a date agreed by Westerner called Colebrook in 1700s. So clearly, where is 1400 BC and where is this 200 BC? There's simply no correlation over here. In the Brahmana, Shatapatha Brahmana, we're seeing nearly 3000 BCE. Where is that and where is this 800 BC? Rig Vedic stories, we're seeing the going to 7200 BC, 6000 BC, but then we are told it is 1200 BC. So clearly we have a problem. Either the linguistic theory is correct and all of our astronomy is a big bluff that many of our ancestors have written into the text, or we say there's the linguistic theory. This is the one that is not matching with every other theory I have. It should be discarded. We have a choice to make, right? So anyway, this is what we are seeing. So Max Muller was confronted with this. His own fellow European, should all of Hindu astronomy chronology be held hostage to Christian chronology? So he wrote this book, this entire book on Hindu astronomy and chronology, in which he said everything is unreliable. He said, I cannot rely on any Indian text. None of them are reliable. Therefore, I will discard them. And this kind of a thinking is used even today by many Indian scholars. If we talk about Puranas, if we talk about Vedic literature, they'll say, no, these are all unreliable. We can't use those things. This is the kind of attitudes we have even today. Today, we have a name for this in science. We call this confirmation bias. It's a failed scientific process where there is some evidence you like to believe selectively. You believe that God created the world in 4004 BCE. You believe Aryan invasion. You believe in Vedanga Jyotisha because it is after Aryan invasion, but you discard all this evidence as unreliable. So this is not okay. So even today's academia that uses this kind of thinking is guilty of confirmation bias. There's a problem with it. I'll quickly finish this talk. There are many other evidences that don't fit into this Aryan invasion hypothesis. This is a paper that came out recently, just last year, 2023, by a professor called Hegarty. So the problem is, according to Aryan invasion theory, all these people who speak these so-called Indo-European languages have come from Central Asia. That theory says that in Central Asia, the horse was domesticated in 3000 BCE. Once they domesticated the horse, these people went towards Ukraine. From Central Asia, they went to Ukraine. So they say the earliest Indo-European languages was Balto-Slavic. That is the earliest language. The final stage of that Kurgan hypothesis is that they came to India through Iran in 1500 BCE. So they say Indo-Iranian language is the final development in that theory, according to them. But then this man, he conducted an analysis using something called mathematical method, Bayesian phylogenetics. And what he found is that if you look at time, this is the present time, this is thousands of years before present, 10,000 years, 9,000, 8,000, 7,000, and so on. So he's showing, if you take Indian and Iranian, these two languages are coming back to a common ancestor. All languages will come back to a common ancestor, right? Then there's divergences. So if you go back in time, you can find the common ancestor, mathematically at least. And he's finding this common ancestor 7,000 years before present for Indian and Iranian. And for Slavic and Baltic, which the linguistic theory is saying is the oldest, he's saying their common ancestor is around 5,000 years before present. So clearly, linguistics, the latest theories are saying there is a problem in some of those assumptions. Those are not true. That the oldest branching appears to be between Indian language and Iran. River Saraswati is the biggest evidence that we have, right? There are people today, even today, say there's no such river called Saraswati. It's a mythical river and all this nonsense. But we have got satellite imagery, which is showing the dashed line that you see. This is the paleo channels of this ancient river, which is running parallel to the Indus. So today we know through science that the Sutlej used to feed into the Saraswati River in an ancient period of time. Then northern India suffered some earthquakes. It is in the Himalayan belt. The Himalayan belt is very active tectonically. And those movements were so strong that the Saraswati changed the course and started feeding into the Indus. That starved the Saraswati River. Additionally, the Yamuna River was also feeding into Saraswati. After the tectonic movements in 1900 BCE, it started flowing eastward. Because of these two reasons, Saraswati River dried up. It no longer existed. And the evidence for that exists. So many research papers. There's a paper in 2019 that is saying there used to exist a perennial, meaning flowing throughout the year, a river in the Harappan heartland. And there's some evidence. I'm not going to read all these things, but clearly it is there. Our Rig Vedas clearly saying that there was a powerful river flowing from the mountains to the samudra, to the seas. How can Aryans come in 1500 BCE and talk about a river that does not even exist? They're not referring to Sapta Sindhu. They're referring to Saraswati. They're referring to Saraswati River, and they're saying here is a powerful river. In 1500 BC, there was no Saraswati. So how can they talk about it? So clearly there's a problem over there, right? And today we have found dozens of settlements along this ancient river course. This is a paper from Deccan College in 2013. And this one is now showing all these black dots that you're seeing. These are archaeological sites that have been excavated in India today. And there is no river there today. There is no river. But the ancient river beds, we know Saraswati River used to go around them. We know that. So we are seeing all over, as you can see, these dots are showing these things. What is more important is these researchers have done radiocarbon dating in all of these sites. And we have some data from that. So this is the radiocarbon dating in Mehergarh. Mehergarh is in Pakistan today. And some of I've highlighted the most ancient radiocarbon. There are many samples of radiocarbon dating, right? So their most ancient sample came to 9,300 years before present in Mehergarh. In Kalibangan, the most ancient samples were 5,000, this is the calibrated date, around 5,500 BCE, which means 7,500 years ago in Kalibangan, ancient samples. In Rakhigarhi, some of the most ancient samples were 6,000 years before present. In Birana, the most ancient samples in BCE, 7,500 years, which works out to 9,500 years before present, some of the earliest radiocarbon dating that has been done in Birana. Those of you who are feeling uncomfortable when I was talking about astronomy evidence, observe how it is crisscrossing with radiocarbon datings now. Radiocarbon dating is saying India was a settled place. Paddy cultivation is saying, yes, they're cultivating paddy, which means societies, which means agriculture, which means there were groups of people living together, which means knowledge is growing in these areas, which means astronomy is practiced. They have observed the nakshatras at various points and told us these things. That is why we have dates going back to 9,000 years, 7,000 years, and so on. Now, radiocarbon dating is also supporting all these things. It is saying that we have data going back to that ancient period of time. This is Bilal, who passed away recently, and he was one of the most respected archaeologists in India. So he wrote a paper towards the end of his career where he talked about continuity of him. He said, you cannot detect periodization. If somebody says there was Harappa period, if somebody says there was Vedic period and other periods, he says that there's no evidence of that. He's saying they're all mixed. It is all mixed over here. For example, in Mohenjo-daro, they got the Pashupati seal, the Proto-Shiva Pashupati seal, swastika symbol. They find terracotta figurines of females showing the sindoor. Even today, married women in India wear the sindoor symbol. It's a cultural continuity from Harappa days. We are seeing the Namaste terracotta figurine in Harappa. Namaste is a Vedantic concept. Narayana and me is bowing to Narayana and you. That is a Vedanta concept of Namaste. What is that doing in Harappa if Harappa was not Vedic? And we are seeing Kalibangan, Shivalinga. We are seeing yoga asana positions. S.R. Rao and B.B. Lal have uncovered these things in various places. And we are seeing all of these things as core component of the Hindu faith. So we are seeing that the cultural artifacts are present in all the layers. We cannot say that the Hindu cultural artifacts are 1500 BCE. It is not true. It is mixed everywhere. That is what he's saying. Then one paper came out in 2021, this paper, where these authors, they reported that archaeological site in Rajasthan, they found 7 nutritional balls. Very, very luckily, they're fossilized and they were able to find that. They analyzed it's made of legumes, moong dal, and other such things. It was some ritual offering. They also found presence of bull figurine and other things, saying it was all some kind of a ritual offering over there. Even today, Pindadana, we do that, our offering for ancestors, where we offer rice balls, right? We offer that. This is a practice from Harappa days, going back to a very, very ancient period of time. That is what this is showing to us. So bottom line, we don't have periodization. We have cultural continuity. There is evidence from different areas for that. Iron, the statement that Central Asia, they domesticated the wild horse. They also got iron because iron swords are better than bronze swords and copper swords. They were able to conquer India in the Aryan invasion. That was the thinking that they had. But we have found iron in India to 2200 BC. This is in Telangana, in Hyderabad, University of Hyderabad campus. Professor S.R. Rao in Gachibowli, he has found iron artifacts, both knives, blades, and other such things, tested in these labs. The date is between 1800 to 2400 BC. Clear evidence that there is iron in India much before the so-called Aryan invasion. Invalidates these researchers, Tiwari, Banerjee, who are saying Aryans brought Iron Age into India. Nonsense. India seem to have had iron much before. This is the research of the Japanese professor Akinaro in 2018 in this book, Iron Age in South Asia. He's shown the archaeological sites in India where iron has been found. And you find a surplus of them in southern India, fewer in northern India. If we think iron has come from Aryans from the northwest part of India, oldest iron artifact should be found here. And later on, the technology must move to the south. But we are seeing the reverse. We are seeing that the earliest iron is found in Brahmagiri, in Gachibowli, and other such places. The earliest iron is found here. And this technology is moving north. As you can see, in northern India, we find 1200 BCE, 1800 BC, 1300 BC, 1200, and so on. So this is evidence of a technology moving from south to the north. You might like to recollect the Purana story that there was a Dravida Desha king called Vaivasvata Manu, and through his sons, they settled in Prayagaraja, and through them was Ikshvaku and Ilas and other populated India. So this is a Puranic account of how India was populated. I am not claiming that these two are the same, but it is nice to me to see that there are two data points that we have that is talking about India being populated like this. I already talked to you about this one. So my concluding remarks, I come to the end. What I call deep history of India. I'm not saying prehistory. I'm not saying proto-history. I'm calling it deep history. Deep history of India taught in schools and universities is utterly wrong. 5 agencies have enforced their ideology and frameworks. They control the history of India today: colonial, Eurocentric, missionary, socialist, and Marxist. There is strong evidence to uphold the antiquity of the Indian civilization. I've shown to you very briefly a multidisciplinary evidence showing there is no evidence of invasion or migration. Rather, we are seeing the continuity of a civilization in India, the antiquity. And if in the future Dr. Rajesh organizes a second talk, I will show to you the IKS, Indian Knowledge Systems, well-developed epistemology showing great antiquity, well-developed mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and how Indian knowledge went out to other parts of the world. And so my bottom line, we have an unacknowledged history today. There is a criminal distortion of Indian history. In any rational society, the people who wrote this like this, the socialists and Marxists, should be locked up behind bars, put handcuffs on them, put them in bars, because millions and millions of Indian minds have been corrupted with this wrong history. We have so many generations who are brought up with low self-esteem because they are told that they are invaders from outside. They also are foreigners to this land, and everything they learned is from outside and all this nonsense. We have grown up learning this nonsense, but evidence today, science is telling us a complete opposite. So I truly think the people who have corrupted our history belong behind bars. I truly hope they'll be held accountable for these things sometime or the other. So with that, I will come to the end of my talk and go to the Q&A. So thank you very much for your attention. You can see my talks on YouTube. Search for my name, Raj Vedam, or you can follow me on X or Twitter or on Facebook, where I put these things. So thank you very much for your attention. I am open now for Q&A. I'll stop sharing.
जी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर, विथ फोल्डेड एंड माइंड ब्लोइंग सर। ये नॉलेज आपका हम लोगों को यूनाइट किया है। और भारत के मैं बताऊं सर, विभिन्न राज्यों से, केरल से, तमिलनाडु से, उत्तर भारत के सभी राज्यों Many scholars are here, sir, on Zoom and YouTube live. अब मैं उनको आमंत्रित करता हूं, ज्यादा तो क्वेश्चन नहीं ले सकते हैं, नेक्स्ट टाइम जरूर सर। इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम पे मैं आपका समय मांगूंगा, करबद्ध होकर आपसे निवेदन अभी भी कर रहा हूं, आगे भी करूंगा कि आप इस पे जरूर दें और हमें आशीर्वाद दें। बी राजगोपालन अयंगर जी, यस, यू फ्रॉम सर, कम। Yes.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yes,
hear you.
yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay,
Please
okay.
introduce yourself. Please introduce yourself. briefly.
I am Raj Gopalan Iyengar. I am a retired nuclear scientist from the atomic energy, basically a geoscientist as a remote sensing and mineral chemistry, paleontology, everything. Whatever you are talking, all those things are dealt with me. And besides that, I am a computer science scientist also. And of late, I am teaching Sanskrit, Veda, Vedanga, and all those things for the technologists and others with the company. So because since I go through the details of our prehistoric geography, we call it as a paleogeography. So what is your opinion about, you talked about the shifting of the Madurai and the different, that I totally agree with you as per the geoscience data also. My idea is that what about the Kumari Gandam and all those things?
So
What are the
Kumarikandam,
data points you could get some from that one and which can correlate with respect to the paleogeographical history
right,
and
right.
this one can
Let
be
me take it.
better correlated.
Kumarikandam. Kumarikandam, there is a question.
Yeah.
So I'll take
Yeah.
about that. I have a talk over there that has got more details. You can take a look. I got more evidence over there. This is the Aryan Dravidian issue. That is the name of the talk, and there's got that. Kumarikandam is a claim that was not there in our literature. Our literature has got no memory of Kumarikandam. This is something that was brought about by Tamil nationalists around 100 years ago when there was a failed theory of Lemuria. People did not know about plate tectonics. Plate tectonics is a new idea in science from 1930s or so. Prior to that, people did not know about plate tectonics, the fact that plates are moving around and clashing into each other and these things. This knowledge was not available. At that time, people wanted to know, why are the fossils of dinosaurs found in different continents? Some dinosaur continents in Africa, found in India, found in South America, and some places appear to be fitting like a puzzle. If you take South America, it seems to fit to Africa. People could not understand these things. So some people presume that there was land bridges those days, and those land bridges was why the lemur monkey in Madagascar and India, they're common over there. That's why they thought that there's commonality. So they called these land bridges Lemuria. So the Tamil nationalists about 100 years ago, they jumped upon this idea saying that this is called Kumarikandam. There was a land between Madagascar to Australia to southern India. And this is the ancient Tamil civilization was there. And that this land got submerged. These were the claims made at that period of time. Over the years, we have learned that this is not a theory that can be upheld. Because to start with, if we take a look at when can the land have submerged, we know land can submerge by 2 or 3 processes, or 2 processes mainly. One process is if you can have tectonic movements, like recently we had the subduction in the Indian Ocean, and through that we know, but subduction does not change by large amounts, a few meters, 5 meters, 10 meters, 20 meters. This is what we expect. The other is ice age melting. If water was locked up in ice and ice melts, then the land can get submerged. So I went about asking, if we take a tool like Google Earth can tell us what is the sea level or what is the altitude at any point, anywhere. The depth of the sea also can tell us. So I used that tool to find out what is the depth around the coastal area of India, outside of Sri Lanka, near Madagascar, near Australia and other places. And you'll see that 90 kilometers outside the coastline of India, the depth goes to 3,000 meters. 3,000 meters, that is the sea level. Only between India and Sri Lanka, the depth is around 100 meters and so on. But even outside the southern part of Sri Lanka, just outside Sri Lanka, it falls to 1.8 kilometers. So bottom line, there could not have been a land to here. But what is possible is during the late glacial maximum and the last glacial maximum during that period of time, we know that the sea level was 125 meters lower. So if we investigate the continental shelves around India, we find up to 90 kilometers outside India, there was land. I'm sure there was a coastal civilization there. I'm sure that civilization got submerged. It is not widespread, but it is around 90 kilometers to 100 kilometers in Kerala area and Tamil Nadu area and so on. That got submerged. This memory is there in Tamil lands, even today. This memory has been subverted and they call it Kumari Kandam and other such things. But I don't think we should pay much attention to it.
Yeah.
So we should look at the evidence, and Professor
Evidences.
Ramasamy has shown some evidence in Pumpuhar area. And so we should continue on that effort and see what else we can uncover.
Very good. One small question. You are talking about one. What about the Sea of Tethys? What we have geoscientifically, it has been proved. And at that time, because it was a huge syncline. Geologically, I am talking because I am being a geologist, exploration geologist. So huge geocline of the tertiary period started elevating, and it has converted into the Himalayas today. Possibly, is it because of that all the Sea of Tethys was in the north and east, west, south was covered by the complete sea? So you are calling it as a Jambu
so once again,
Jambu
yes, sir.
Dweepe?
So once again, thank you for the question. Allow us to clarify. So we see from plate tectonics, we are seeing that if we work backwards in time, today's geological models are saying that the continents were joined at some period in time, going to 200 million years ago, going to Pangaea and even before that, Rodinia and other things, things were joined at one period of time. But because of these plate movements, they have separated out. India was connected with Madagascar, with Africa. If you go back in time to 200 million years ago, separated from that, and has been on a course, collision course as an island going through the ocean towards India. When India passed over where Seychelles is today, it also experienced something called a rift. There's a rift in the ocean floor where enormous amounts of volcanic activity was there. Scientists are today estimating 40,000 years of volcanic activity happened in India. That is what gave rise to Deccan Plateau. When we see the rocks in Maharashtra, in Karnataka and other places, where did they come from geologically? That happened when India, when it was coming towards Asia, can you please mute? Yes. And then eventually we know that India crashed into Asia and gave rise to Himalayas growing. So that is why today in Himalayas, high up in the mountains, we are seeing fossils of sea creatures, ammonites and other things. These are these huge shell fossils. We're finding them in the Himalaya mountains. That is why we know that there was a sea, the sea that you referred to. It was there in India. This is the evidence for those things. Thank you for that question.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Sen Patak, sir. Please. Sen Patak, sir.
Dr. Raj Vedamji, my hats off about the knowledge you gave. And I 100% agree with your statement. There is no Aryan invasion in India. One small example I want to give in support of your statement about house mice. T.H. Yoshida is considered the top-notch scientist today about the cytogenetics of mouse in the whole wide world. Now, in mouse, the number varies from 38 to 40. If you collect house mice in America, you will find 38 chromosomes. So Yoshida has come to India and he has gone to different parts of India and he has collected mice in different parts. And he found all those chromosome numbers within India. And therefore, he has concluded that the origin of mouse is from India. That also correlate with us, with our Ganesha ji. So all those mice with different chromosome numbers have gone to different countries through our ship. You know, the grains and all this. So that also in support of your statement. Thank you very much, sir. And I hope that Mishra ji will give you another chance to invite you to give another lecture. And I will be there because I learned so much. Thank you again very much.
Thank you, sir. अब मैं राज वेदम सर का करबद्ध होकर प्रणाम करता हूं और लगातार जुड़े हैं। अब अपने मंच परिवार के मैं अपने पैट्रॉन के रूप में आदरणीय सर को मैं प्रणाम करता हूं और आगे हम सर के वक्तव्य लेते रहेंगे। और चेयरमैन के रिमार्क्स के लिए मैं कपिल मेहता सर, वाइस इंटरनेशनल प्रेसिडेंट को आमंत्रित करता हूं, क्योंकि अगला कार्यक्रम हमारा जूम पे फिर से प्रारंभ होने जा रहा है थोड़ी देर में। तो कपिल मेहता सर,
Thank you, Rajesh ji. And I'm sure we all agree that it was a profound talk in which Dr. Vedam discussed that how the Western narratives have always favored and claimed that the origin of astronomy and math and other fields which he discussed in his lecture this morning outside India and then imported into India now, which so he also discussed evidence that how multidisciplinary data from several published sources which he showed and shared reveals the truth. It is the other way around. ये हमारा बहुत ही बड़ा दुर्भाग्य है कि हमारा जो ज्ञान था वो हमारे से कैसे छीन लिया गया और हमें गलत धारणाओं पर विश्वास करने के लिए विवश किया गया. सो ऐसी ऐसी जो चीजें हैं और रॉन्ग क्लेम्स विच आर मेड इन आवर टेक्स्ट बुक्स, they are very, very dangerous for any society because the distorted history and narratives in textbooks will corrupt the young minds and will severely damage their self-esteem. And that's exactly our society is suffering from even today. Actually, हमें इतनी हीनता की भावना भर दी गई है कि हमें अपना जो ज्ञान था उस पर गर्व होने के बजाय हमें कॉम्प्लेक्स लगता है. So the textbooks in schools that definitely need to be corrected for the correct history so that the coming generations know the facts and be proud of their culture and history. और ये जो हमारे ये संस्कृति मंच जैसे प्लेटफॉर्म है, they can play a very vital role in really implementing those kind of changes and bringing the truth and letting the youngsters know about the rich history and all the knowledge India was enjoying at one time. On these lines, Dr. Vedam has already worked with some textbooks agencies to review and correct them. In 2014, for example, his team worked on the history textbooks that were taught in the state of Texas, यहाँ पर, and corrected their contents related to Indian history, which is thank you very much, Dr. Vedam, for doing all those efforts. Between the year 2016 and 2018, he reviewed the textbooks used in Telangana state, which were taught from grade 6 to 10th, and produced a 150-page long report. And later he did the same in the state of Andhra Pradesh. So please continue that work, and we need to bring the truth so that our youngsters can definitely understand how rich was our history and how much knowledge we had accumulated at that time. क्योंकि ये जो आज बड़ी बड़ी पुरानी यूनिवर्सिटी सिस्टम इंडिया से शुरू हुआ था, जैसे नालंदा यूनिवर्सिटी या मिथिला या फिर तक्षशिला, सो ये सारा ज्ञान वहां से जाता था दूसरे देशों को, पर हमें बताया गया उल्टा उससे बिल्कुल. तो मुझे तो ऐसे लगता है कि जैसे किसी को आपको दिखाना कि आपकी जो लाइन पेपर पर खींची गई है वो छोटी है, तो या तो उसके आगे एक बड़ी लाइन खींच दो या आपकी लाइन को इरेजर से छोटा कर दिया जाए. पर हमारे साथ दोनों किए गए. और ये जो सारा जैसे बताया डॉक्टर वेदम ने कि ऑल दिस कॉलोनिस्ट एंड मिशनरीज एंड वेस्ट के जो लोग थे, उन्होंने कैसे वो पैराडाइम को चेंज किया और हमें गलत इंफॉर्मेशन दी. सो वंस अगेन आई वुड लाइक टू थैंक राजेश फॉर ऑर्गेनाइजिंग दिस talk, which was very informative, Dr. Vedam, and we hope that we'll have another opportunity to listen to him, particularly this medicine, how advanced was the medicine in Indian, जो हमारे scriptures वगैरह उसके ऊपर depend करके how we knew about the medicines. So thank you very much again, and I would like to stop here because I know we are getting very late and people are waiting for the dinner and you have another program in line. Thank you again. धन्यवाद.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर. मैं एक सुर में सबसे पहले आज के इस मैं कहीं यूनिक और हमने सोचा भी नहीं होगा जितने हमारे गुरुजन जुड़े हैं, कोई एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर हैं, असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर हैं, भारत के विभिन्न राज्यों से जुड़े हैं, मंच के पदाधिकारी हैं। मुझे लगता है जैसा मैं फील कर पा रहा हूँ कि इस तरह का जो टॉक है, जो नॉलेज है, जो विभिन्न एविडेंस बेस्ड है, आप सर के द्वारा प्रस्तुत यहाँ दिया गया, हमें ज्ञान दिया गया और हमारे सभ्यता की प्राचीनता को सिद्ध किया गया, वह हमारे सामने पहली बार ऐसा हुआ है, प्रथम बार शायद हमने ऐसा सुना है, देखा है एविडेंस बेस्ड। तो मुझसे लगता है कि मेरे सभी गुरुजन सहमत होंगे। इस ज्ञान के लिए आदरणीय वेदम सर को मैं धन्यवाद करता हूँ विद फोल्डेड हैंड सर। मेनी मेनी थैंक्स सर। एंड मैं चाहूँगा दोबारा आप हमें अपॉर्चुनिटी दें आपको सुनने के लिए। और हमारे अंतर्राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष प्रोफेसर सेन पाठक सर, कपिल मेहता सर, पेट्रोल सत्यनारायण सर, महेंद्र मिश्रा सर, आप सुबह सुबह उठकर पता नहीं चाय भी पिए हैं कि नहीं पिए हैं, मैं नहीं जानता हूँ, लगातार बैठे हुए हैं और हमें आपके उपस्थिति से हमें उत्साह मिलता है। और निश्चित तौर पे आप सबके ज्ञान से ही हम जो भारत में रहने वाले हैं, जो अमेरिका की तरफ देखते हैं, तो हम जरूर प्रज्वलित, हमारा बुद्धि जरूर प्रज्वलित होगा, अवश्य प्रज्वलित होगा और हम तथ्यों को समझ पाएंगे और अपने ऋषि परंपरा के ज्ञान को आधार बनाकर आगे हम कार्य करेंगे। सभी गुरुजनों को यूट्यूब लाइव, जूम पर जितने भी जुड़े हुए हैं सबको कोटिसा आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। आइए हम लोग सामूहिक शांति पाठ करेंगे। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ओम शांति शांति शांति। बहुत बहुत आभार। आदरणीय सर, मैं निवेदन करूंगा, इसी प्लेटफॉर्म पे नेक्स्ट प्रोग्राम है, इसलिए मैं इसको एंड ऑल नहीं करूंगा और आप गुरुजन स्वयं लीड होके जाएंगे। और आगे के कार्यक्रम के लिए गोरखपुर मंडल से डॉक्टर अभिषेक पांडे जी जुड़े हैं, मैं उनको आमंत्रित करता हूं। अभिषेक पांडे जी।
सबको मैं भी नमस्कार कर रहा हूँ। मैं सूर्यकांत त्रिपाठी।
अगले वक्ता हमारे यही हैं, सूर्यकांत त्रिपाठी जी, हमारे उत्तर प्रदेश प्रांत कार्यकारिणी से संबंधित हैं। हमारे कुलदीपक शुक्ल सर हैं,
जी
उपस्थित
सर।
हैं।
जी सभी
नमस्कार
गुरुजनों को प्रणाम करता हूँ। गोरखपुर से, गोरखपुर मंडल के अध्यक्ष के रूप में सभी को प्रणाम करता हूँ सर। और आज का हमारा जो महाराजगंज जनपद के कार्यक्रम लगा हुआ है संस्कृत सप्ताह के अवसर पर, वहाँ का व्याख्यान होना है, तो उसके संचालक उमेश तिवारी जी हैं, यदि जुड़ गए हैं तो उमेश तिवारी जी यदि जुड़ गए हैं तो
प्रणाम सर।
जी तो कार्यक्रम आप संचालन करें सर।
हाँ, वो उमेश सर जुड़े होंगे।
जी सर। हाँ, क्या मेरी आवाज मिल रही है?
मिल रही सर।
आज के हमारे कार्यक्रम के अध्यक्ष श्री डॉक्टर राम पांडे जी और मुख्य वक्ता डॉक्टर